Logan Pierce stood in the executive boardroom on the 47th floor of Meridian Technologies, his calloused hands resting on the back of a leather chair he'd never been invited to sit in. 22 years. 8,000 days of arriving before dawn, of missing his daughter's recitals, of answering emails at midnight while his wife slept alone. 22 years, and Marcus Thornwell, the CEO who'd been with the company for barely 3, looked at him like he was a piece of outdated equipment. "You're replaceable, Logan," Marcus said, his voice carrying the cold efficiency of a man who'd never built anything with his own hands. "We all are. That's the beauty of systems." The words hung in the air between them, sharp as broken glass. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago sprawled beneath a gray October sky, indifferent to the small human dramas playing out in its towers. Logan could see his reflection in the glass. 51 years old, hair more silver than brown now, shoulders still broad but carrying an invisible weight that seemed to grow heavier each year. "I've given this company everything," Logan said quietly, and he hated how his voice cracked slightly on the word everything. "I built the integration system from scratch. Every major client we have uses architecture I designed." Marcus adjusted his Patek Philippe watch, a gesture Logan had seen him make countless times when he wanted to remind everyone in the room of the hierarchy. "And we're grateful for your contributions. But the Nakamura deal requires a fresh perspective. Younger minds. No offense, but technology moves fast, and you've been comfortable for too long." Comfortable. The word tasted like ash. Logan thought of the nights he'd spent in server rooms, the weekends troubleshooting critical failures while his son played Little League without him in the stands. He thought of Sarah, his wife, who'd stopped asking him to come to bed at reasonable hours somewhere around year 15. "The Nakamura Corporation deal is my design," Logan said, his voice steadier now. "I've spent 18 months building the integration framework. I know every line of code, every security protocol, which you've documented thoroughly, I'm sure." Marcus stood, signaling the conversation's end. "Trevor Hastings will be taking over as lead architect on the project. He's brilliant, Harvard-educated, and frankly, he doesn't cost us what you do in salary. The shareholders appreciate efficiency." Trevor Hastings, 29 years old, full of confidence and theory, who'd once asked Logan if legacy systems meant anything built before 2020. Logan had trained him, patiently explained concepts Trevor's expensive education had somehow missed, and now Trevor would present Logan's work as his own innovation. "When does this transition happen?" Logan asked. "Immediately. We need you to bring Trevor up to speed over the next 2 weeks, transfer all project files, and then we're restructuring your role. You'll be moving to quality assurance. Same floor, different wing. 20% pay reduction, but you'll keep your benefits." Quality assurance. A corporate euphemism for a slow death, a room where senior employees were sent to quietly fade away before retirement. Logan had seen it happen to others. Good people, loyal people, who'd accepted the demotion with grateful smiles because they had mortgages and college tuition and medical bills. "And if I don't accept?" Logan said. Marcus smiled, and it was the smile of a man holding all the cards. "Then we'll have to consider this a resignation. No severance, of course. Company policy." Logan looked around the boardroom where decisions about his life had been made without him present. The table was imported mahogany, the chairs were Italian leather, and the coffee machine in the corner cost more than his first car. He thought about the basement servers, the cramped desk where he'd spent 2 decades solving impossible problems, the grateful emails from clients he'd saved millions of dollars through his innovations. "I'll need to think about it," Logan said. "You have until Monday. That gives you the weekend." Marcus was already checking his phone, the conversation over in his mind. "Close the door on your way out." Logan walked through the executive level, past assistants who didn't make eye contact, past offices with names on doors that changed every 18 months. He took the elevator down to the 33rd floor, where the Real work happened, where fluorescent lights hummed overhead and the carpet had coffee stains from 1,000 late nights. His desk sat in the corner, overlooking not the skyline but the brick wall of the adjacent building. 22 years, and he'd never rated a window view. The photos pinned to his cubicle wall told the story of a life lived in the margins. Emma at 5, gap-toothed and holding her first science fair trophy. Daniel in his baseball uniform, forever frozen at age 12. Sarah on their 20th anniversary, her smile not quite reaching her eyes anymore. "Hey, Logan." Jennifer Park appeared at his cubicle entrance, a manila folder in her hands. Jennifer was 37, sharp as a razor, and one of the few people in the building Logan considered a genuine friend. "I heard. I'm sorry. News travels fast." "It's bullshit," she said bluntly. "Trevor doesn't know half of what you've forgotten. The Nakamura deal is going to be a disaster without you." Logan opened his drawer, looking at the accumulated debris of 2 decades. Expired ID badges, commendation letters that had never translated to promotions, a stress ball from a corporate retreat where they talked about synergy while planning layoffs. "Maybe Marcus is right. Maybe I am replaceable." "Don't," Jennifer said sharply. "Don't let them make you believe that. You're the spine of this company's infrastructure. Everything we built, everything that works, that's you." That Friday evening, Logan sat in his Honda Civic in the parking garage, unable to turn the key. Around him, younger employees rushed to their Teslas and BMWs, heading to happy hours and weekend plans, their entire careers still ahead of them like unopened gifts. He remembered being that young once, remembering believing that hard work and loyalty meant something. His phone buzzed. "Sarah, working late again?" He typed back, "Heading home now." But he didn't move, couldn't move. The concrete pillars of the garage seemed to press in on him, each one a year of his life he'd poured into this place. He thought about Monday, about the choice Marcus had given him that wasn't really a choice at all. Quality assurance or unemployment, humiliation or financial ruin. When he finally pulled into his driveway in Oak Park, the house was lit from within, warm and golden. Through the window he could see Sarah in the kitchen, probably making dinner, probably wondering why he was late again, probably tired of wondering. 26 years of marriage, and somewhere along the way, they'd become polite strangers who shared a mortgage. "You're home," Sarah said when he entered, and it sounded more like an observation than a greeting. She was 50, still beautiful in ways that had nothing to do with youth, her dark hair pulled back, reading glasses perched on her nose. She taught literature at the community college, and had published 2 novels Logan was ashamed to admit he'd never finished reading. "They're demoting me," Logan said, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. 22 years, and they're moving me to quality assurance. 20% pay cut. Sarah set down the wooden spoon she'd been holding. "Oh, Logan, or I can quit. No severance." She crossed the kitchen and wrapped her arms around him, and Logan felt something crack inside his chest. When was the last time they'd held each other like this? Not the perfunctory goodnight kiss, not the obligatory anniversary embrace, but this real human contact, the kind that acknowledged pain. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know." He pulled back, looked at her face, saw the years there, the worry lines he'd helped carve. "We need the insurance. Daniel's still on our plan until he graduates, and Emma's grad school." "We'll figure it out," Sarah said, but her voice carried doubt. They always figured it out, but figuring it out had meant sacrifices, had meant postponed dreams, had meant Sarah taking extra sections to teach, had meant both of them running faster just to stay in place. That weekend, Logan couldn't sleep. He lay in bed Saturday night, staring at the ceiling while Sarah breathed softly beside him, and ran through scenarios in his mind. He could take the demotion, endure the humiliation, collect paychecks until they pushed him out entirely. He could quit, try to find another position at 51 in an industry that worshipped youth. He could. His phone lit up on the nightstand. 2:47 a.m. An email from the Nakamura Corporation's technical team, marked urgent, CC'd to half the company. Critical integration question regarding security protocols. Need clarification on authentication handshake procedures before Monday's implementation review. Previous documentation unclear. Logan sat up, careful not to wake Sarah. He knew exactly what they were asking about. It was a complex system he'd designed specifically for Nakamura's requirements, a 3-layer authentication process that protected against both external breaches and internal fraud. He'd spent months perfecting it, had written detailed documentation, had even created video tutorials. But the documentation wasn't clear. It was precise, thorough, exactly what any competent architect would need. Unless the person reading it didn't have the foundational knowledge to understand it. He opened his laptop and pulled up the project files. There, in the shared folder, he could see the recent activity. Trevor Hastings had accessed the documents at 11:34 p.m. on Friday, right after Marcus had announced the transition. Trevor had opened and closed 17 different files in 30 minutes, which meant he was skimming, not understanding, probably panicking. Logan's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He could reply, explain the protocols, save Trevor from embarrassment, and save the deal from delay. That's what the old Logan would have done. The loyal soldier, the reliable one, the man who fixed problems even when they weren't his responsibility anymore. Instead, he closed the laptop. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Sunday morning, he drove to the office. The building was empty, just security in the lobby who waved him through with familiar recognition. Logan had been coming in on weekends for so long, he probably had more face time with the guards than with his own family. His badge still worked. He rode the elevator to 33, walked through the dim cubicle forest to his desk. Everything was exactly as he'd left it, except now it felt different, like visiting a museum of his own life. He logged into the system and began making copies, not of everything, that would be theft, but of his own work, his own innovations, the systems he'd built from scratch that bore his fingerprints in every line of code. He copied 18 months of Nakamura project files to an encrypted drive. He copied the integration frameworks, the security protocols, the backup systems, the disaster recovery procedures. Then he started removing things. Not obviously. Not in a way that would trigger immediate alarms. But Logan knew these systems the way a surgeon knows anatomy. He knew where the weak points were, which documentation files were critical versus supplementary, which code comments explained the why behind complex decisions. He didn't delete. That would be sabotage, and Logan Pierce wasn't that person. Instead, he simply removed his personal notes, his explanatory comments, the institutional knowledge that lived in the margins of official documentation. The code would still run. The systems would still function. But without his annotations, without his explanations of edge cases and unusual solutions, anyone trying to modify or troubleshoot would be working blind. Monday morning arrived gray and cold, autumn asserting itself over Chicago with wind that cut through Logan's coat as he walked from the parking garage. He'd barely slept, had drunk too much coffee, and his hands trembled slightly as he rode the elevator up. Marcus's assistant told him to wait. Logan sat in the reception area of the executive floor, watching people who made 3 times his salary rush past with their problems that felt important, their meetings that would be forgotten by next quarter. At 9:47, the assistant finally nodded him in. "So," Marcus said, not looking up from his computer screen. "What's it going to be?" Logan thought about Sarah, about the conversation they'd had last night over dinner that neither of them had eaten. She'd told him something he hadn't expected. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you." But Logan, when was the last time you felt proud of what you do? When was the last time you came home energized instead of exhausted? He couldn't remember. "I quit," Logan said. Marcus looked up then, surprise flickering across his face before the professional mask returned. "That's disappointing. I'd hoped you'd choose to stay with the company. No severance, right? Company policy?" "That's correct. You'll need to surrender your badge and laptop by the end of the day. HR will be in touch about Cobra insurance options." Logan stood. "I'll need a few hours to organize my files, transfer critical knowledge to Trevor. Of course, professional to the end." Marcus was already looking back at his screen. "We appreciate your years of service." Logan walked back to his desk, and this time he took the long route, passing through departments he'd helped build, seeing faces he'd mentored, systems he'd designed. Jennifer found him at his cubicle, her face stricken. "You're really leaving?" "I'm really leaving. The Nakamura deal. Not my problem anymore." Logan started packing his personal items into a cardboard box. The photos, the commendation letters, the coffee mug Emma had made him in pottery class that said, "World's okayest dad. Trevor's brilliant, remember? Harvard educated." Jennifer lowered her voice. "Logan, that integration system is a masterpiece, but it's complex. Trevor won't be able to." "Then maybe they should have thought of that before telling me I'm replaceable." She was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss you too." He meant it. "But maybe it's time. Maybe I've been here too long. Gotten too comfortable." He spent the next 3 hours writing a transition document that was technically comprehensive but practically useless. All the what, none of the why. He listed every system, every protocol, every integration point, but explained nothing about the decisions behind them, the problems they solved, the disasters they prevented. At 1:15 p.m., Trevor Hastings appeared at his cubicle, looking nervous. "Hey, Logan. Marcus said you're leaving." "That's right. I wanted to say thanks for everything you've taught me." Logan looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a kid who genuinely believed his education had prepared him for this, who had no idea how much he didn't know. It wasn't Trevor's fault. He was just the weapon Marcus had chosen to use. "The Nakamura files are in the shared drive," Logan said. "Everything's documented." Cool. I've been looking through it. Pretty straightforward stuff." Logan almost laughed. "Yeah, straightforward. There was one thing though, that email from their tech team about the authentication protocols. I wasn't totally clear on what they were asking." "It's all in the documentation," Logan said, and this time he did smile. "I'm sure you'll figure it out." By 4:30, his desk was clear. 22 years packed into 2 boxes. He took one last look around the floor, at the kingdom of cubicles and conference rooms where he'd built an empire no one would remember was his. He surrendered his badge at security. The guard, Miguel, looked sad. "Really leaving us, Mr. Pierce? Really leaving? Who's going to fix the parking gate when it acts up?" Logan had forgotten about that, how he jury-rigged the parking system 3 years ago when the company didn't want to pay for proper repairs, how he'd been the unofficial fix-it person for a dozen systems that had nothing to do with his job description. "Not my problem anymore, Miguel." He walked to his car, put the boxes in the trunk, and sat behind the wheel. His phone buzzed immediately. A text from Jennifer. "They're already panicking. Trevor just called an emergency meeting about the Nakamura integration timeline. This is going to be a shit show." Logan didn't reply. He turned the key, pulled out of the garage, and drove home in the middle of a Monday afternoon for the first time in 2 decades. Tuesday morning, Logan woke up at 5:30 a.m., his body refusing to accept that he no longer had anywhere to be. Sarah was still sleeping, so he made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, telling himself he wouldn't check his work email even though he'd set up forwarding to his personal account before leaving. By 6:15, he'd checked it 3 times. The first signs of trouble appeared in a thread between Trevor and the Nakamura technical team. Trevor had responded to their authentication question with an answer that was technically correct but operationally incomplete. He'd explained what the system did without understanding why it did it that way. By 8 a.m., Nakamura's lead architect had replied with 3 follow-up questions, each one probing deeper into the integration logic. Logan could read between the lines. They were confused, and confusion bred doubt, and doubt was poison for a $5.7 billion deal. By 10:30, Marcus had sent a company-wide email announcing that the Nakamura implementation review, scheduled for Wednesday, was being postponed to ensure all technical requirements are thoroughly addressed. Corporate speak for, "We're not ready and we're buying time." Logan closed his laptop. Not his problem. He spent the day doing things he hadn't done in years. He cleaned out the garage, organized his tools, took a walk around the neighborhood in daylight. He called Daniel at college, actually had a conversation instead of leaving a voicemail. He picked Sarah up from work and took her to dinner at the Italian place they used to go to when they were dating. "You seem different," Sarah said over wine. "Lighter somehow. I feel unemployed. You feel free." She reached across the table and took his hand. "I can't remember the last time you weren't checking your phone during dinner." Wednesday, the emails got more urgent. Jennifer forwarded him a chain where Trevor had made a critical error in explaining the data synchronization protocols. Nakamura's team had caught it, were now questioning whether Meridian really understood the scope of the integration. Marcus had jumped into the thread, trying to smooth things over with corporate platitudes about minor miscommunications and ongoing optimization. Thursday morning, Logan's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Logan Pierce. The voice on the other end was accented, precise. This is Kenji Yamamoto, Chief Technology Officer of Nakamura Corporation. I apologize for calling your personal number. I obtained it from our previous correspondence. Logan's heart rate picked up. Mr. Yamamoto, how can I help you? I understand you are no longer with Meridian Technologies. As of Monday, that's correct. I see. There was a pause. Mr. Pierce, I will be direct. Your integration design is exceptional, elegant, secure, scalable. But the person who is now presenting as lead architect does not appear to understand it. He can describe the components but cannot explain the architecture. This concerns us greatly. Logan said nothing, waiting. We have invested 18 months in this partnership, Yamamoto continued. We are prepared to invest $5.7 billion in this integration. But we cannot proceed with a technical team that does not understand their own systems. This is not acceptable for our board of directors. I understand your concern, Logan said carefully, but I'm no longer in a position to help. I'd suggest directing your questions to Marcus Thornwell, the CEO. We have. He assures us everything is fine. But our technical assessment indicates otherwise. Another pause. Mr. Pierce, would you be willing to consult independently? We would compensate you directly. Logan thought about Marcus's face when he'd said replaceable. He thought about 22 years of loyalty rewarded with a demotion and an insult. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Yamamoto, but I'm going to have to decline. I'm not interested in consulting work at this time. I understand. Thank you for your time. After he hung up, Logan sat with his coffee and watched the sun rise over the suburban rooftops. His phone buzzed with another text from Jennifer. All hell breaking loose. Nakamura threatened to walk. Emergency board meeting this afternoon. Still not his problem. By Friday morning, the story had broken. TechCrunch ran the headline, Nakamura Corp questions Meridian's technical capability, $5.7 billion deal in jeopardy. The article quoted anonymous sources saying that the departure of a key architect had left Meridian scrambling to demonstrate basic competency in their own proposed systems. Logan's phone started ringing. Reporters, former colleagues, headhunters who'd somehow gotten his number. He ignored them all. At 2:47 p.m., Marcus called. Logan stared at the name on his screen for 4 rings before answering. Logan, we need to talk. I don't work for you anymore, Marcus. I understand you're upset. Upset? Logan laughed, and it felt good. I'm not upset. I'm unemployed. Remember? By choice. Because I was replaceable. That was, look, things were said in the heat of the moment. The board is concerned about the Nakamura situation. We'd like you to come back, temporarily, just to help smooth the transition. No. We'd restore your full salary, of course, and no. Marcus's voice hardened. You have a professional obligation. I had a professional obligation. For 22 years. Then you told me I was replaceable and offered me a demotion. So I made a choice. I chose to be replaced. The documentation you left is inadequate. Trevor can't. Trevor is brilliant, Marcus. Harvard educated. Fresh perspective. I'm sure he'll figure it out. Logan hung up. His hands were shaking, but it was adrenaline, not fear. For the first time in years, he felt alive. By Monday morning, the deal was dead. Nakamura Corporation issued a formal statement withdrawing from the integration partnership, citing fundamental concerns about technical leadership and institutional knowledge retention. Their stock barely moved. They had other options, other partners. Meridian's stock dropped 23% in a single day. Logan read about it over breakfast while Sarah got ready for work. The articles were brutal. The Wall Street Journal called it a catastrophic failure of succession planning. Forbes ran a piece titled, "How One Executive's Ego Cost Shareholders $2 billion in Market Value." Some of the pieces had identified Logan by name, though he'd refused all interview requests. A few painted him as a disgruntled employee who'd sabotaged the company. Most, however, told a different story, one of corporate short-sightedness, of valuing cost-cutting over institutional knowledge, of the danger of treating experienced employees as disposable. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. His LinkedIn profile had exploded with connection requests and messages. 3 competing firms had reached out with serious offers. A startup wanted him as CTO. A venture capital firm wanted to fund him if he had any interest in starting his own company. Sarah found him at the table, staring at his laptop. "You okay?" "I don't know what I am," he admitted. "Part of me feels vindicated. Part of me feels guilty." "You didn't do anything wrong," she said firmly. "You worked there for 22 years. You gave them everything. They chose to throw it away. People lost money. Shareholders, employees with stock options. Marcus Thornwell made a decision based on arrogance and spreadsheets instead of understanding what actually made his company work. That's not on you." She kissed the top of his head. "What are you going to do?" Logan looked at the offers on his screen, at the opportunities that would have been impossible a week ago. "I don't know. Maybe nothing for a while. Maybe we take that trip to Ireland we've been talking about for 10 years. Sarah smiled. "I'd like that." The rest of the week brought more fallout. Marcus Thornwell was placed on administrative leave, while the board conducted a review. Trevor Hastings quietly resigned. His LinkedIn updated to say he was exploring new opportunities. Jennifer called to say that half the senior technical staff was updating their resumes. "The whole thing is falling apart," she said. "Without you, without the institutional knowledge, clients are getting nervous." The Sullivan account just put their renewal on hold pending organizational stability review. "That's another $40 million annually." "I'm sorry, Jen." "Don't be. This was always going to happen. You were the only one holding it together. They just accelerated the timeline." She paused. "Some of us are talking about leaving together, maybe starting something new. Would you be interested?" Logan thought about it. "Maybe. Let me take a few weeks to clear my head first." That Saturday, Emma came home from graduate school for the weekend. She was 24, brilliant, working on her PhD in environmental science. Logan couldn't remember the last time they'd had a real conversation. They sat on the back porch in the October sunshine, drinking coffee. "Mom told me what happened," Emma said. "I'm sorry, Dad." "Don't be. It might be the best thing that ever happened to me." "Really?" Logan watched a cardinal land on the fence, bright red against the autumn leaves. "I spent 22 years building something for people who didn't appreciate it. I missed your childhood, missed your brother's games, missed anniversaries and birthdays and moments I can't get back. And for what? For a company that told me I was replaceable." "You're not replaceable," Emma said quietly. "The whole world is figuring that out right now. Maybe, but even if I am, maybe that's okay. Maybe being irreplaceable isn't the point." He looked at his daughter, really looked at her, saw the woman she'd become while he'd been living at the office. "I'm proud of you, Emma. I don't think I say that enough." She hugged him, and Logan felt another piece of the armor he'd been wearing crack and fall away. Sunday evening, as Emma was packing to go back to school, Logan's phone rang. "Kenji Yamamoto again. Mr. Pierce. I hope I'm not disturbing you." "Not at all. I wanted to inform you personally that Nakamura has decided to pursue the integration project with a different partner. We have selected Integrated Solutions Group. They have an excellent technical team led by a senior architect with 25 years of experience." "That's good to hear. However, the reason I'm calling is to ask if you would be willing to consult with our team directly. Not through Meridian, but as an independent contractor. Your architectural vision is exactly what we need, and we would prefer to work with its creator." Logan walked outside, into the cooling evening air. "That's a generous offer, Mr. Yamamoto. Can I ask you something? Of course. When you were evaluating the proposal before all this happened, did you know my name? Yes, Yamamoto said without hesitation. Your name was on every document, every technical specification. We knew who built the system, even if Meridian seemed to have forgotten. Logan smiled. I'll think about your offer. Can I have a few days? Take all the time you need. 3 weeks later, Logan stood in a small office space in downtown Oak Park, watching movers bring in desks and equipment. The sign on the door read Pierce Technical Solutions, LLC. It was small, just him and 3 other people. Jennifer Park had left Meridian and joined him, along with 2 other former colleagues who'd had enough of corporate politics. They weren't trying to build an empire. They were trying to build something sustainable, something human-scaled, something where people mattered more than quarterly earnings reports. The Nakamura consulting contract had been the first client, but not the last. 2 of Meridian's former clients had reached out, asking if Logan could help with projects Meridian no longer had the expertise to handle. A manufacturing company in Germany wanted help designing a supply chain integration system. A hospital network needed someone who understood both complex systems and the human stakes of getting them right. Sarah came by at lunch, bringing sandwiches and looking around the space with approval. It suits you, she said. Small but yours. That's the idea. Logan had never wanted to manage dozens of employees or fight for office space in a skyscraper. He wanted to solve interesting problems with good people and go home at reasonable hours. He wanted to build things that mattered and be recognized for it. I'm teaching a workshop on Thursday evening, Sarah said. First time you'll actually be able to come. I'll be there, Logan promised and meant it. That afternoon, he got an email from Marcus Thornwell's lawyer. Meridian was threatening legal action, claiming Logan had breached confidentiality agreements and stolen proprietary information. It was desperate, obvious, and ultimately toothless. Logan's lawyer had reviewed everything, confirmed that he'd taken only his own work product, and violated no agreements. But the fact that they'd tried said everything about how badly things had fallen apart for them. The company that had called him Replaceable was now trying to claim he'd been indispensable all along, that his departure had been a form of sabotage. Logan sent the email to his lawyer and deleted it from his inbox. Not his problem anymore. Daniel came home for Thanksgiving, and the whole family sat around the dinner table for the first time in years without Logan checking his phone every 5 minutes. They talked and laughed and told stories, and Logan realized how much he'd missed by always being somewhere else in his mind. Dad seems different, Daniel said to Sarah while doing dishes. Logan overheard from the living room. He's happier, Sarah said simply. He's doing work that matters with people who appreciate him. That makes all the difference. By Christmas, Pierce Technical Solutions had 6 employees and more work than they could handle. Logan was turning down projects, being selective, choosing clients who valued expertise over cost-cutting, who understood that good systems took time and knowledge to build right. One cold January morning, Logan sat in his office and pulled up an article from TechCrunch. Meridian Technologies had been acquired by a larger competitor at a significant discount. Marcus Thornwell had departed with a modest severance. The company that had told Logan he was replaceable had itself been replaced, absorbed into something bigger, its identity erased. Logan felt no satisfaction in it, no vindication. Just a quiet sadness for all the people who'd built that company with their years and their expertise, only to watch executives gamble it away on quarterly thinking. His phone buzzed. Jennifer, from her desk in the next room. Nakamura just referred us to another client in Tokyo. They're impressed with our work. Logan smiled and went back to the code he was writing, solving a problem that mattered, building something that would last, working with people who knew his value. Outside his window, Oak Park was waking up to a snowy morning. The office was warm, his coffee was hot, and for the first time in 22 years, Logan Pierce was exactly where he wanted to be. That evening, he came home while it was still light outside. Sarah was grading papers at the kitchen table, and she looked up with genuine surprise and pleasure when he walked in. You're home early. I'm home on time, Logan corrected, kissing her cheek. I'm thinking about making that Irish trip happen this spring. What do you think? I think that sounds perfect. Logan hung up his coat and sat down across from her. No laptop, no phone, just present in the moment. 22 years he'd given to people who didn't value it. But the rest of his life belonged to him, to his family, to work that mattered and people who cared. He was 51 years old, and he was just getting started. 6 months after leaving Meridian, Logan received a LinkedIn message from a former colleague still at the company. Wanted you to know they're using your integration framework as a case study in what not to do in succession planning. You're famous in business schools now. The cautionary tale about treating people as replaceable. Thought you'd want to know. Logan read it, smiled, and closed his laptop. He had a dinner reservation with Sarah, and he wasn't going to be late.